I believe Tommy Pham could be the missing piece to this offense. Do I believe, however, the Royals could get a deal done? We'll dive into it in this edition of Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15, or you can catch us on wherever you get your podcasts. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts. We're on Odyssey, and we're on YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you are a first-time listener and you want to know a little bit more about me and this show, well, I'm based here in Kansas City. I work at Sports Radio 810 WHB, do some hosting, co-hosting, and some producing on a day-to-day. And then when you come to this podcast, when you click on this link, we're going to give you 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. Varies on when we bring it to you during the day. Today, because it is the 4th of July, so happy 4th of July to all you Royals fans out there. If you're going to the game tonight, hopefully it's another win and a series win against the Tampa Bay Rays. But I wanted to make sure I got this episode done this morning so that I can go and celebrate the 4th of July here in a few hours. So didn't want to have everybody waiting around. I definitely was not going to be doing an episode after the game tonight because I'll be by a pool all day and enjoying myself, for lack of a better term. So wanted to get this episode out and done. And I think it's timely to do because on the off chance something happens during the 4th of July, I doubt it would, but we would already have an episode out and I wouldn't have to adjust my schedule to do said podcast and do all those segments that would pertain to one particular move. But before we dive into a potential move in the future, let's tell you about our title sponsor in Booking.com. And Locked On Royals is brought to you by Booking.com today. Booking. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. We're getting closer and closer to the trade deadline. And I think we're starting to zero in on some guys that could be in play for Kansas City. At 48-40, I still am of the belief that they are going to make a trade to bolster this team. They are not going to sell any of their assets. I know there was a belief among some fans in the tailspin that selling would be better because in the end they weren't going to make the playoffs. All that we have heard from J.J. Picollo has indicated that this team is going to be aggressive. How aggressive? I guess you can define it however you want to. Aggressive by the Royals standards may mean going after 2 bullpen arms. Aggressive by your standards may be acquiring 3 or 4 guys by the deadline. Or maybe aggressive is just having a couple waiver wire pickups. It's really how you define it. But I do think the Royals are going to acquire at least 2 guys. I think that is the wheelhouse of what J.J. Picollo is looking for. I think it makes the most sense. Of course, I am putting all of the focus, all the energy on the bullpen. And I think the last time I revisited a segment like this of trade pieces, I still thought that the DH spot or a corner outfield spot was not going to be needed. And we discussed it last night in our third and final segment that the 3 outfielders that you've been playing every single day, Melendez, Isbel, and Renfroe, have all had their best stretches of the season. So that is going well for you. However, we're kind of forgetting the fact that the Royals don't really have a true DH. And when Michael Massey comes back, he's not going to be DHing. He's going to be playing second base. He might rotate a little bit. I'm not naive and pushing aside the fact that Matt Quatraro likes to rotate a lot of guys. He doesn't just placeholder somebody at DH, and that's the only spot they can be in the lineup. We even saw Nelson Velasquez from time to time go out there and play right field and play left field. I mean, he bounced around. He's not just going to put somebody at the DH spot. However, it does open up a possibility here, and a possibility that I think is a great fit for the Royals. The Royals are in need of a leadoff hitter. I am now under the impression that Michael Garcia is just not going to be that guy if they are to make that late push into the postseason. If Michael Garcia can't turn things around, well, maybe he can as the 7-hole hitter or as the 8-hole hitter. But they need somebody that can provide them more pop at the top of the lineup. They need somebody, quite frankly, that can get on base at a much higher clip than Michael Garcia can. And I think a cheap and good option and a guy that is playing well this season would be Tommy Pham. And we've seen multiple articles now this past week, the last 2 weeks, that have said Tommy Pham would be a good fit for the Royals. And we already have no proof that the Royals have interest as well. They've been scouting Tommy Pham. And there were a couple different factors in play here in which why I think it is a fit. One, he's been good at the leadoff spot this year for the White Sox, so we know he's going to be traded. Two, he's a 36-year-old rental player, so the price is going to go down a little bit. The White Sox are not going to be able to leverage Tommy Pham for multiple top 100 prospects. It'll likely be a prospect throw-in or two. Number three, he played for Paul Hoover and Matt Quatraro before in Tampa Bay, so there is that connection. And I know I've heard fans say, well, Tommy Pham is this guy that's a clubhouse cancer. You know, he's always willing to fight people. He slapped Jock Peterson over a fantasy football dispute earlier this year in Milwaukee when he was running inside the baseline coming home. He collides with William Contreras, and Contreras gets in his face, or at least jaws back at him. Tommy Pham didn't like that. In the postgame, he's saying, you know, he knows how to fight so that he can screw some people up. That's the PG version of it. But Tommy Pham has also had tons of experience in the playoffs, and he's been on numerous teams that have made playoff pushes. Last year being a perfect example with the Arizona Diamondbacks. You know, the Arizona Diamondbacks were a team that didn't put everything on Tommy Pham, but he was a key piece in them getting all the way to the World Series. And I don't think many people in Arizona thought at the time that Arizona Diamondbacks team at the conclusion of the regular season were going to get to the World Series. But Tommy Pham, I think, hits the price range. I think he is an upgrade over Taylor Ward. I think he would be an upgrade over any sort of reach you would go for with a Joe Adell, Luis Rengifo we talked about. I think he'd be a good leadoff hitter, but when you're leading the league in average or at least top five, that's going to be pretty pricey. And you have years of control. Jesse Winker is another guy I really like. I think Jesse Winker would be a great fit, and Washington is now getting in that territory of selling. But they might sell high on Jesse Winker because he's only 30 years old. No, Tommy Pham being 36, I think, is that perfect combination of being a rental player, being a bit more seasoned, having a good year, and he's a leadoff hitter. And the fact the Royals have scouted him, and we don't know if they've scouted Jesse Winker. So Tommy Pham, to me, I think is a good fit for this offense. And I think he would be one of those acquisitions that, you know, boost this lineup a little bit. And it's easy on how you can plug him in there. You know, right now, the Royals are DHing Michael Massey. If you acquire Tommy Pham will lead off for you and either play right field or left field or DH. They can rotate between Melendez and Renfroe. You can hit Bobby Witt Jr. second. You can hit Vinny third. Bobby, of course, at short. Vinny at first. Salvi can catch and hit fourth. In the fifth spot, you can likely put Michael Massey there since he's been hitting there a lot this year. He'll be back at second base. In the sixth hole, you can put Renfroe there. He'll play right field or he'll DH. In the seven hole, you'll probably put MJ Melendez. He'll play left or DH. Garcia can hit eighth. He'll play third. And then Isbell rounded out, play center field and hit ninth. That's the lineup that I think could work here. Off the bench, you'd have Freddie Fermin. You could have Nick Loftin, or if you want the righty-lefty, you can keep Frazier and Hampson, and you can send Loftin back to the minors. I think he still has some options. And then the fourth guy you have would be Dairon Blanco, and then go out there and get a bullpen arm. So that, to me, could be the one or two moves you're looking at to really help this team in the long run. You know, the way Michael Garcia has been hitting at the leadoff spot since June 1st has been abysmal. He's been damn near unplayable offensively, and you want him to get back into his groove, but maybe at the top of the order at this point, it's not. And Tommy Pham, to me, might be the best piece for a leadoff type of bat. That's affordable. That's what I keep coming back to. He is affordable. We can sit here and say Jesse Winker, he's 6 years younger. Though a rental piece, the Nationals can sell high. Luis Rengifo of the Angels, he's one of their best trade pieces. He's 27 years old and has years of control, and he's top 5 in batting average. That's going to be selling high. Joe Adell, I think he was more of a trade piece about 2 months ago, but if they were looking into that, he's not been good since the beginning of the year, and he's high risk because, you know, he's a guy that's never really put it together. Taylor Ward, I know that he just got banged up, actually, but Taylor Ward's a guy that doesn't really move the needle for me. Tommy Pham, yeah, not great defensively, but I'll just take the bat at this point. I'll take the track record the last few years and being on playoff teams and being cheap. I think it'd be a good pickup for the Royals. I believe it would be a fit. That's going to be controversial, I know, to some in the comments because some people really don't like Tommy Pham. If I'm just looking at it from a baseball standpoint, a leadoff hitter, a cheap bat, a guy they can acquire at the deadline, I'm kind of zeroing in on Tommy Pham, especially since they've already done their scouting on him and they do have interest in Tommy Pham. I think we could see it make sense unless somebody else comes in last minute and decides to offer a bigger package for a guy like Tommy Pham. We'll take our first break of the show. When we come back, Michael Wacha was brilliant last night, and he's been brilliant for his last 7 to 8 starts. I think this is who you were counting on the rest of the way, and I also want to go over his importance in the rotation. We've talked about it before, but I really want to highlight some key stuff about him and how he can help this team get to October. We'll dive into it next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. And hopefully all of you are going to be enjoying a very fun 4th of July wherever you may be watching this podcast. And hopefully it's another win tonight for the Royals. They take on the Rays at 7:10. But before we dive any further into some more Royals baseball, want to give a shout out to a few of our sponsors, starting with Ibotta. And with Ibotta, it's a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies to even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you are purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or that fancy dinner that you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you earn cash back that you can withdraw to your bank account, PayPal, or gift card. Simply add offers in the app, upload your receipt, and the money is yours. You can save over 2,400 brands and shop at over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores, Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. It's time you join the over 50 million users who use Ibotta to earn cash back every time you shop. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 for just trying Ibotta by using code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or the Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and start using the code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONMLB. Last night was certainly highlighted by Kyle Isbell's tremendous catch in center field. Even MLB Network and Greg Amsinger and the other two guys, I actually couldn't get a good look at who else was on the panel for the live look at an MLB Network. They were absolutely floored by what Kyle Isbell did in center field, and we all know he saved the game. We know that he was the star of the show. However, that play overshadowed just how good Michael Wacha was once again, and how good Michael Wacha has been for his last 7 to 8 starts. There was a time this season where I think the fan interest in Michael Wacha or the fan confidence in Michael Wacha wasn't that high. And I think you can go back to that start against Texas at home. He gave up 7 runs, just was bombed all over the field by a Rangers team that came into Kansas City underachieving, quite honestly. And his ERA skyrocketed to 5.5. And Michael Wacha was that guy at the beginning of the year that every time he took the ball, you felt like, he could get you through 5 innings and the game would be close. But when he imploded, the wheels would fall off. I was at a game in which he pitched against the Padres. It was actually the one where Luis Ariz hit the line drive back at his foot, and that put him on the injured list for a little bit of time. But that was still 2 or 3 starts after the one against Texas. And it is so interesting to me in baseball how guys just have certain trends. Guys play well in one month of the year, but not so much the other. Like, it just sticks with you over the course of your career. And Michael Wacha right now is doing damn near the same thing he did last year. And looking at his numbers right now, his last 7 starts for the Royals, and that goes back around the time he took on the Rangers at Kauffman Stadium. A 2.21 ERA. He's thrown 40 2/3 innings. His whip is sub 1. He struck out 38 and walked only 11. That's in his last 7 starts. And you go back to last year when he took on multiple great lineups in the National League pitching for the Padres. He started the month of April and I think a little bit into May, just like he did this year. His ERA wasn't very good. He wasn't striking a lot of guys out. He wasn't working deep into the game. And then he went on this stretch of 20 to 25 starts where he was masterful. I mean, 6 innings, 1 run, 7 innings, 1 run. At times 7 2/3, 8 innings, 6 innings, no runs, 5 innings, 1 run. I mean, just consistently pumping out quality start after quality start after quality start. And with the Royals this year, at the beginning of the year, he gave up 3 runs in 5 innings against Baltimore, did shut out the White Sox over 7 innings, gave up 5 in 6 innings against the Mets. He gave up 2 against the White Sox again. So he dominated in his first 4 starts a really bad team in the White Sox. Then he goes only 4 1/3 against Toronto. He goes against Detroit, and he gets roughed up a little bit for 4 runs and 5 2/3. Then he has that start on May 4th against the Rangers, in which he gives up 7 earned runs and 3 2/3. And at that point in time, you're looking at Michael Wacha, and you're wondering, is he a guy that every 5th day you really are going to put a lot of faith into? Or are you just hoping at some point he replicates what he did last year? Well, he's done exactly that. May 9th against the Angels, 3 earned runs in 6 innings. And we know that he had 6 shutout before he got squeezed in that final time he was out there by the home plate umpire and kind of took away a really good line. It was 3 runs total, but 2 earned in that. So that was his first start after Texas. Then he faces Seattle. And against Seattle, 6 innings, 1 earned run. Then against Detroit at home, he goes 7 innings, gives up 2 runs. Then against Tampa Bay, 6 innings, 2 earned runs. On May 31st, he took on the Padres, 2 earned runs, 5 1/3. On June 22nd, against Texas in Arlington, his first start back from the injured list, 1 earned run in 5 innings. When he took on Cleveland at home, 5 1/3, only 1 earned run. And then last night, 6 innings, 1 earned run. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 starts. 8 starts since the 3 2/3 against Texas. So even that number I brought up in the last 7 starts, a 2.21 ERA, it's lower than that because it's not even factoring in last night's start in which he was so good. And I thought very efficient. And what I love about Michael Wacha is that even in games like yesterday, where in the first inning, a guy like Isaac Paredes hits a home run, you kind of feel like when Michael Wacha gives you a run in the first inning of the second inning, that might be all you get. At least of late, that's what you've been able to see. And a veteran is going to do that. A veteran is going to be able to bear down most of those times, but not everybody. Not everybody has the pure stuff to bear down. And I think that Michael Wacha has some of the best stuff in the rotation. I don't think it's really that much up for debate. I think that he is one of those arms that when it's his turn in the rotation, I really don't care who he's facing. I don't care if it's Cleveland. I don't care if it's the Yankees. I don't care if it's the Phillies down the road. I don't care if it's the White Sox. I don't care if it's Miami. I trust that at this point in time, in the 8-game stretch he's been on, the 8-start stretch that he's been on, I trust him to pitch well. I can see a quality start coming from Michael Wacha. And this is the exact version the Padres got of Michael Wacha last year. The Michael Wacha that finished with a 3.22 ERA. No, he's getting closer and closer to that total. And when you already have Seth Lugo, when you already have Cole Reagans, you get to have this as your number 3. Oh, and might I add, your number 4 is Brady Singer with an ERA near 2.98 or 2.99. He's at 3.05. He's almost sub 3. And then Alec Marsh is your 5, can throw 7 innings of 1-hit ball against the New York Yankees. His rotation's been ridiculous, and I think the 2 acquisitions and Seth Lugo and Michael Wacha have been some of the best acquisitions this ball club has seen in a long, long time. Okay, we're going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, we're going to dive into this bullpen and how one power arm can change everything about how they handle late game situations. But before we do that, a shout out to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. When we come back, one power arm can change a lot as to how Matt Quatraro handles this bullpen. We'll dive into it next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can always find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to a few of our sponsors, starting with our title sponsor in Booking.com. Booking.yeah. With summer travel heating up, especially for travel baseball games, it's time to explore those cities you always secretly wanted to learn about. And yes, we're talking about your rivals' cities. With hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay even in your rival's city. I've been traveling a few times this year, been to Dallas a lot, I've been to Oklahoma City. I'm making a trip to San Francisco coming up in a few weeks, going through Booking.com so I can have everything covered. I don't have to worry about it. It is just so easy to use, and that's what we do here with our sponsor. We want to tell you, the listener, it's easy to use those apps. From hotels that look over the stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across America for your summer travel this MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com, on the site, or in the Booking.com app. Also, if you're planning on going to the game tonight, I know it's 4th of July. Maybe you'll have your fun in the afternoon, do some grilling, maybe swim in the pool a little bit, or if you're at a lake, but you're debating about going to the baseball game tonight, well, don't worry about it any longer of how you're going to get those tickets. Head over to Game Time, my favorite app to use when buying tickets. I always check out what deals they have, bundle deals, the hottest deals, the tickets that are selling the most, the cheapest deals. I even, out of curiosity, though at times I can't afford it, look for the most expensive ticket. But it's fun to do it all on the app called Game Time. Now, with Game Time, all you need to do is download their app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. Those terms apply. So again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDONMLB, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Along with Michael Wacha's start, Kyle Isbell's catch last night, I think there was another takeaway I had, and I think I touched on it a little bit in last night's episode, but it was going to Chris Stratton in the 8th inning of a 3-run game. And maybe it's different. Maybe they go to somebody else if it was a 2-run game or a 1-run game. But the reality is it was a 3-run game. Chris Stratton went out there. He got the first guy he faced to pop up and then never got another out. He gave up the double and then, or was it, I think it was a walk and then a double, if I'm not mistaken, or it might have been a hit. Anyways, he goes base runner, double, and then he walks the third guy. And Matt Quatraro has to go to James McArthur for a 5-out save. James McArthur got it done. Now James McArthur is likely unavailable for tonight. And if you're in another situation like that, you're going to have somebody else close out the game. And I thought to myself, John Schreiber went in the 7th. It would have been a clean inning if Bobby Witt Jr. didn't have a bad throw and Vinny Pasquantino could have picked it. But it wasn't a clean inning. So maybe John Schreiber's not available tonight. But I thought to myself, what does one power arm do for this bullpen? What does one power arm do for Matt Quatraro? And I think a lot. I think a hell of a lot more than people think it will. Because here's why. Michael Wacha goes 6 innings. Pick a starting pitcher. Reagans, Lugo, Singer, Marsh. They go 6 innings. It's 2-1. The way you can shuffle your bullpen in the back end with one consistent addition, a Carlos Estevez, a Michael Kopech, a Tanner Scott. I don't want to really say Austin Adams anymore because he hasn't been that great for Oakland. Ursig of Oakland. A couple different guys we're piecing together here. But of those I just mentioned, let's say you add one of them. Well, the 7th inning, I don't care who you throw. It can be Schreiber. It could be that new arm. It just makes you have more comfort, have more confidence in closing out that game. You don't need to go trade for a guy who can only pitch in the 9th. Maybe, let's say it's Michael Kopech. Okay, Michael Kopech's closed out for the the White Sox this year. Maybe you look at him and say, I want him to be the setup guy. It just makes your 8th and 9th that much easier. Okay, it's Kopech and MacArthur. It's Schreiber in the 7th. It's Serpa if it's lefties or Will Smith if it's lefties. You're not rolling the dice. And last night, I couldn't tell you who I thought they were going to in the 8th inning because that's the issue right now. They're missing one power arm to just bridge that gap. You go with Schreiber in the 7th, no problem. Kopech's there in the 8th. Estevez is there in the 8th. It doesn't really matter. You could throw Estevez in the 7th and Schreiber in the 8th and MacArthur in the 9th. Or Estevez or Kopech or Scott closes out in the 9th. MacArthur throws the 8th, Schreiber's the 7th, or MacArthur goes the 7th and Schreiber goes the 8th. You can shuffle it around a hell of a lot easier than you are right now. Right now, it feels like Schreiber and MacArthur are the high leverage guys. If there's a 1-run game on the road, it's going to be Schreiber in the 8th and MacArthur in the 9th. However, who throws the 7th? Who can you trust to throw the 7th and pitch a clean 7th? Not Nick Anderson. For a while, it wasn't Angel Serpa. He got the big out last night, but he's been struggling of late. Will Smith, yes, but Will Smith is also just hoping for the soft contact. He's only given up 3 runs since the beginning or the mid part of April. But I don't know if I would look at Will Smith in a big-time moment on the road and say the 7th inning is yours. I'd rather it be matchup-oriented than just saying, hey, it's righty, lefty, righty, but Will Smith is the 7th inning guy. Chris Stratton is not that guy. Chris Stratton can be a guy when you're down by 3, go give us 2 innings, and that's good to go. You know, it's not going to be Carlos Hernandez. We've seen that. We saw that in the Miami game. We know when they throw Carlos Hernandez, it's typically low-leverage spots. So one power arm feels like it changes everything. It changes how you piece together your strategy in the end of games. It pieces together, you know, how you can save your bullpen for the next day. You know, if there is a lefty-lefty matchup, and let's say there's 2 lefties and a righty, you can go to Will Smith. Okay, well, that's fine. You still have Serpa the next day, but you're not having to also go with Schreiber to get out of that. Let's say Will Smith goes 2 outs in an inning, and then he can't get that, you know, 3rd and 4th guy. You bring in Schreiber. Schreiber has to get 4 outs, and then you go to MacArthur. You're just wearing and tearing your bullpen. We're having a power arm who can just pitch the 8th or can go take on a lineup in the 7th. It can save you a lot of headaches. It can save you a lot of heartaches when blowing those games. And I'm not sure that we are totally grasping how much that alters our frustrations, our feelings toward moves that Matt Quatraro makes. No, if you're one of those fans that goes, I don't understand why Matt Quatraro goes to Carlos Hernandez in a 1-run game. I don't know why he goes to Chris Stratton in the game. Because there isn't anybody else you can go to at this point. You add that one arm, it takes away that gamble, that roll of the dice. And last night was a roll of the dice. You had to get 5 outs from James MacArthur, who's been very good of late, who was great in the month of June, who kicked off July with a 5-out save. You feel good about that. But it also taxes James MacArthur more. Think about in a 3-run game, you hand it over to a lockdown power arm. Now MacArthur just needs 3 outs. And he has a 3-run cushion. And he can probably throw tonight. That's what I think the Royals have to be looking for. We talked about Tommy Pham. It's just as important, but I would actually say a hell of a lot more important in getting that power arm than it is to get that one more bat in the lineup. Well, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. You can always follow me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. I hope everybody has a fun and safe 4th of July. And tomorrow we're going to come back with another Mailbag Friday. But before our final goodbye, one last shout out to Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available on the free Fire TV channels app. Tomorrow, it'll be another Mailbag Friday, but until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.